Being turned over to the lawyers for Briana Williams, a Jacksonville mom and Navy petty officer accused of abusing her daughter. 5-year-old Taylor Williams' remains were found in Alabama last year.
This is the story of Briana Shanti Williams and her beautiful daughter, Taylor Rose. You think you've heard it all, but trust me, you haven't. She was bright, driven, a top-of-her-class Navy officer. Briana had the kind of resume that made people stop and stare. Valedictorian, decorated sailor, secret-level clearance. From the outside, she looked like she had it all together. But behind the uniform and accolades was a world she kept carefully hidden. Briana's story didn't begin in chaos. In fact, her early years were remarkably stable, at least for a time. Raised mostly by her aunt and uncle from the age of 6, she was described as sweet, ambitious, and quiet. She grew up in Alabama, excelled in high school, and even became homecoming queen. Family members recalled her smile and her discipline. But what many didn't see, what was buried deep, was the trauma she carried. At some point in her childhood, Briana experienced abuse. Not the kind that leaves visible scars, but the kind that rewires the way someone sees the world. The psychologist who later examined her would describe it as sexual trauma at the hands of parental figures, and said she had been suicidal from a very young age. But Briana didn't let that stop her. She pushed harder, smiled wider, achieved more. Then came Taylor Rose. Born February 12, 2014, a tiny, delicate girl with big, curious eyes. From the beginning, Taylor was Briana's world. At least, that's what everyone assumed. Co-workers thought she was a doting mother. Facebook photos showed them smiling, matching outfits, playing at the park. But when the cameras were off, that's where the real story begins. By 2018, Briana was juggling the pressures of being a single mom with a demanding Navy career. She was stationed in Virginia at the time. Long hours, odd shifts, deployments. To help with childcare, the Navy provided in-home support. At least on paper. But something began to shift. She started paying rent on 2 separate properties at once, claiming it was to escape a man who made her feel unsafe. Co-workers believed her. She seemed cautious, maybe a little paranoid, but she was still functioning, still working hard, still chasing promotions. Meanwhile, Taylor was slowly fading from sight. One of Briana's Navy colleagues, a woman named Kendra, recalled seeing Taylor a handful of times, maybe 2 or 3. Sweet girl, always smiling. But even Kendra noticed something strange. Taylor was rarely at school. According to Briana, she wasn't enrolled because of behavioral issues. She's just not ready for kindergarten, Briana had said. It seemed odd, especially for someone so structured. Behind the closed doors of her Jacksonville apartment, things were unraveling fast. Neighbors started noticing Taylor wandering alone. A little girl, barely 5, walking around the complex holding a stuffed animal, looking for her mom. On more than one occasion, neighbors guided her back to the apartment. They didn't want to intrude, but they were worried. They tried to help. One neighbor even offered to babysit. But Briana refused. She kept Taylor close. Too close, some thought. She rarely let her run ahead or play freely. Her interactions felt forced, like she was holding on tightly or trying to hide something. Then, Taylor disappeared. But it would be weeks before the world realized it. You see, Briana never reported her missing. Not right away. In fact, it wasn't until November 6, 2019, after Taylor had been unseen for nearly a month, that Briana finally called 911. And when she did, her story was chillingly robotic. I just woke up, the back door was unlocked, my daughter's gone. The dispatcher asked if Taylor had a favorite hiding spot. Briana said no. She was here last night, she was wearing pink pajamas. But investigators noticed something right away. Briana wasn't panicking, she wasn't even crying. If anything, she looked bored. Detached. She spent most of her time scrolling on her phone. And when officers asked about Taylor's father, she said he wasn't in her life, that her own mother had recently had custody of Taylor. But none of it checked out. Halloween had just passed. Briana claimed she'd picked up Taylor from her mom's house that night and brought her back home. But text messages told a different story. So did her phone data, so did her car. When detectives searched her vehicle, they found strange things, cleaning supplies, a car seat covered in plant matter, and stuffed animals strapped in like passengers. The trunk, spotless, too spotless. That's when things really started to spiral. Briana agreed to an interview with police. They expected a desperate, grieving mother. What they got was something else. Calm, detached, evasive. She gave vague answers, claimed she heard noises on the roof the night before Taylor vanished, but never checked on her. Claimed the house had been broken into before. She didn't cry, she didn't beg for help, she didn't even ask if police had found Taylor. That was the moment investigators knew something was deeply wrong. But they still had no idea where Taylor was. They hadn't found a body, they hadn't found evidence of foul play. Not yet. What they found was something far more disturbing. A mother with secrets, a paper trail of lies, and a missing child who hadn't been seen for weeks. And the worst part, Briana was just getting started. When someone's child goes missing, they cry, they plead, they post flyers, they call friends, they retrace every step. But Briana Williams, she posted a Craigslist ad. It was November 3rd, 2019, just 3 days before she would dial 911 and claim her 5-year-old daughter Taylor was missing. But this ad wasn't about a missing child, it was a request for childcare. Yes, you heard that right. Briana was asking strangers online to babysit a child that she knew was already gone. Why? Because she needed her lie to look real. If police looked through her digital trail, they'd find that Craigslist post and believe she was still parenting a living child. That Taylor was home, that she had plans, that maybe, just maybe, someone had taken her. But Briana knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't preparing for childcare. She was preparing for cover. Investigators were combing through Briana's home on Ivy Street. They noticed something right away. No toys, no art, no stuffed animals, no signs of a child living there, except for an empty backpack, a jacket on a chair, and a box of crackers on an unused bed. There was a faint red stain on the headboard, another on the floor near the closet. A field test came back negative for blood, but something still felt wrong. Too sterile, too staged. They found air fresheners, newly purchased and unopened. Cleaning supplies stacked in the corner. A spotless trunk in the car. Why so clean? Why now? As officers searched every inch of the property, they asked Briana where Taylor liked to play. Did she have a favorite toy? Yes, Briana said, Mr. Bear. But Mr. Bear was missing too, just like Taylor. In her police interview, Briana repeated the same story over and over. She went to bed around midnight. Taylor had tucked herself in. When she woke up around 7 a.m., the back door was unlocked. Taylor was gone. That was it. She never once broke down. She never once asked to see search footage. She never once pleaded with the officers. When detectives pressed her, she made it worse. She claimed she heard noises that night, dragging sounds, footsteps above her. But the house had no upstairs. They asked if she checked on Taylor when she heard those sounds. She said no. I had my gun. I was scared. Scared of what? Her 5-year-old daughter? Or the truth she was trying to bury? As Briana's story continued to fall apart, police were busy tracking her digital footprint. Phone records, text messages, bank statements, surveillance. And what they found left no doubt. Taylor hadn't just disappeared. She hadn't run away. She hadn't been abducted. She had been gone for a long time. On November 12, 2019, a small skeleton was found in a remote wooded area in Demopolis, Alabama, about 450 miles from Jacksonville. It was inside a garbage bag, and inside that bag, the decomposed remains of a small child. Next to the remains was a black trash bag, a pink piece of fabric, and remnants of what looked like a Halloween costume. Taylor had finally been found, but how she got there? That was the puzzle investigators were still trying to solve. Neighbors had tried to help. Back in April, a man named Carlos had seen Taylor outside alone, more than once. Sometimes at 7 a.m., barefoot, holding her stuffed animal, waiting near the glass door. He brought her back inside, but he never called the police. He didn't want to overstep. His partner, Miss Sweeney, also saw Taylor alone on several occasions. She offered to babysit. Briana refused. She was a single mom, Miss Sweeney said. We didn't want to offend her. So they waited, watched, and slowly, Taylor disappeared. April to October of 2019. No doctor's visits, no school enrollment, no playdates, no photos, just silence, just distance. Even family hadn't seen Taylor in nearly a year. In one text exchange with her sister, Briana called Taylor a nightmare. She hid trash under the bed, Ziploc bags with banana peels. I'm done, she wrote. You can have her. She even joked about giving Taylor away. Her sister brushed it off, calling it a phase. But the next messages were even worse. "She opened my water bottles in the back seat while I was driving to the park," Briana complained. "I'm at a loss. You can have her, LOL." There was no laughter in that room when investigators read those messages, because Taylor wasn't acting out. She was starving. Police took photos of leftover oatmeal in the kitchen, a few crackers on a child's mattress, a backpack leaning against the wall. That's it. Taylor's room was empty. No dolls, no books, no joy. This wasn't a child's room. It was a prop. When Briana went out at night, on dates, to parties, to bars, she told friends that Taylor was in Alabama with family. She wasn't. Taylor was home, alone, in a dark apartment with no supervision, no comfort, no safety, and no food. Phone data proved it. Briana was active on multiple dating apps, OkCupid, Facebook dating, even Craigslist. She was talking to multiple men, flirting, making plans, visiting their homes. Not once did she make arrangements for childcare. Not once did she ask for help. And when detectives asked those men about Taylor, they all said the same thing. "I didn't know she had a daughter." Dr. Ernest Berdini, a psychologist brought in by the defense, interviewed Briana over 3 days. He described her as soft-spoken, detached, distant. She claimed she had a long history of eating disorders and childhood trauma. She was suicidal, isolated, insecure, and yet, she was functioning. A Navy officer with top-secret clearance, a woman who could compartmentalize everything until her lies caught up with her. Briana told Dr. Berdini that Taylor died in her sleep, that she found her cold and lifeless one morning, that she didn't know what to do, that she panicked. She said she wanted to kill herself, that she placed Taylor's body in a plastic container and drove to Alabama, hoping to bury her near her grandfather's grave. She claimed she couldn't find the site, so she left Taylor in the woods and came back home. But GPS data told a different story. She went there more than once. She lied about when she left. She lied about where she went. She lied about everything. And after dumping Taylor's body in a remote field, she bought movie tickets, she picked up groceries, she called a lawyer, she made a Craigslist post, and she went back to her job as if nothing had happened. So what really happened to Taylor? We may never know the full truth, but we know enough to say that she was failed by her mother, by her neighbors, and by a system that never saw the signs. In her final months, Taylor was isolated, neglected, and ultimately discarded by the very person meant to protect her. And the saddest part? She didn't even know she was in danger. October 31st, 2019, Halloween. It was supposed to be a night of candy, costumes, and childhood magic. But for Taylor Rose Williams, it was the last night her name would be mentioned in the present tense. Briana Williams told police she picked up Taylor from her mother's house that night, dressed her in a tiger costume, took her home. That was the story. A nice, neat timeline that made sense on the surface. But detectives weren't buying it. They had access to phone records, GPS pings, surveillance footage, text messages, and a very different picture was starting to emerge. Briana did leave Jacksonville that weekend. She drove through Alabama, but she never stopped at her mother's house. There was no handoff, no pickup, no costume party, no tiger suit. Taylor never made it to Halloween. That was the first lie. And from there, they only got darker. Earlier that week, Briana had searched for something disturbing online. She used a private browser, DuckDuckGo, and the search term? Refeeding syndrome. It's a dangerous, sometimes fatal condition that happens when someone who's been starving suddenly starts eating again. The body goes into shock. It can cause organ failure, and it often appears in malnourished children. Why was Briana searching that? Why that week? Why just days before Taylor was reported missing? Investigators also uncovered her browsing history from September. She had clicked on an article about a teenage cheerleader who was acquitted after hiding her newborn baby's body in the backyard. She was fascinated by that case. Obsessed, even. Reading it again and again, trying to figure out how that girl got away with it. It was clear now. Briana was building a blueprint, a digital blueprint of how to disappear a child. When she finally picked up the phone and dialed 911, Briana played the part she'd rehearsed in her head for weeks. "She was just here," she told the dispatcher. "I put her to bed. I don't know where she went." But the dispatcher was trained to listen for panic, for shock, for emotion. There was none, just silence between words, a distracted tone, like someone multitasking. In fact, Briana spent most of the call scrolling on her phone. By this point, Taylor had likely been gone for days, if not weeks. Investigators decided to recheck the local garbage collection route. They halted pickups in the entire Ivy Street neighborhood, recovered trash, sifted through it all, and that's when they found it. A small, stained mattress, child-sized, a bottle of air freshener, a pink sweater, and most damning of all, a receipt from Walmart for gloves, duct tape, and trash bags. Dated the same week Briana said Taylor vanished. It wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was evidence. When Taylor's remains were discovered in Demopolis, Alabama, medical examiners couldn't determine the exact cause of death due to the level of decomposition. Like she had been left exposed to the elements for too long. But there were injuries. She was found wrapped in trash bags, placed inside a black garbage container, and covered in vegetation. A small fragment of a Halloween costume was tangled near her remains. Her name was never engraved on a tombstone, not at first. Only a case number. A number for a child. Even after Taylor's body was discovered, Briana didn't cry. She didn't come forward. She didn't confess. She did something else. She bought movie tickets, posted on Craigslist asking for childcare. And when questioned, she said she was trying to move on, trying to act normal. Her biggest concern? Breaking her lease on the Ivy Street apartment. That's what she texted to her friends. Not, "Have they found my daughter?" Not, "I didn't mean for this to happen." But, "I need a lawyer to help me break my lease." At the sentencing hearing, the courtroom was packed. Detectives, journalists, prosecutors. But not a single member of Taylor's family showed up. Not one. Not in person, not virtually. No mother, no grandmother, no uncle, no cousin. Only prosecutors stood in the gap. And it was then that State Attorney Lauren Anderson said the words that chilled everyone in the room. Taylor had no voice, because the one person who should have spoken up for her was the one who took her life. Where was Taylor's father? Living in Alabama, estranged. Where was her grandmother? Living nearby, but hadn't seen Taylor in over 2 years. Where were the aunts, the uncles, the cousins? Scattered, disconnected, silent. They tried reaching out to Briana, but their calls went unanswered. At trial, one uncle said, "I don't know how we got so distant." But Taylor didn't need distance. She needed presence. She needed protection. She needed someone. Instead, she spent the last months of her life in isolation. No school, no friends, no doctor, no birthdays, just silence behind closed doors. She was alive, but invisible. And then one day, she was gone. Dr. Berdini, the court-appointed psychologist, testified that Briana suffered from untreated childhood trauma, emotional detachment, eating disorders, and severe anxiety. But none of that explained what happened to Taylor. Even he admitted, Briana was capable of lying with precision. She kept secrets, wore a mask of success, maintained her Navy career, passed evaluations, lied with a smile. And when he asked her what really happened that night, her answer? "I don't know, I went to sleep. I woke up and she was dead." That's all she offered. No regret, no tears, no truth. In the end, it didn't matter what story Briana told, because Taylor's remains told the truth. She was failed, ignored, forgotten, until her name showed up on a missing persons report. And her little body was found in a shallow grave hundreds of miles away from the bedroom where she once laid her head. In the court, Briana Williams initially pleaded not guilty. The legal battle was long and complex. The autopsy report on Taylor's remains was inconclusive due to their decomposed state, and the cause of death was officially listed as undetermined. This created a massive challenge for the prosecution, as proving murder without a definitive cause of death is incredibly difficult. However, the prosecution built a powerful case based on circumstantial evidence. They argued that Briana tortured, maliciously punished, or caged Taylor sometime between April and November 2019. The evidence from the Southside apartment, the foul-smelling closet, the blood stains, the state of the child's bed, was undeniable. They argued that Briana had starved her daughter to death, and that the autopsy's finding of childhood nutrition stress on the bones was a key piece of this puzzle. Prosecutors pointed to the fact that Briana had pulled Taylor out of preschool in April, and that her neighbors and family had not seen her since. Briana's own father had expressed concern about Taylor's well-being and her weight, but Briana had dismissed his concerns. The prosecution's case was not just about murder. It was about a pattern of calculated and cruel neglect. They argued that Briana's actions, from hiding Taylor from the world to the elaborate cover-up, all pointed to her guilt. In a stunning and unexpected plot twist, after years of legal maneuvering, Briana Williams pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and child abuse charges in March 2022. The plea deal allowed her to avoid a first-degree murder trial. During her sentencing, the judge, Kevin Blaze, said he believed he could infer from the evidence that Taylor had died of starvation. He spoke of the undeniable signs of abuse and the fact that Taylor had not been valued by her parents. He noted that Williams had disposed of the body in such a way that prevented any definitive analysis, but that the circumstantial evidence was damning. Briana Williams was sentenced to life in prison. Justice, in the end, was served for Taylor Rose Williams, a little girl who, for her short life, was hidden in the shadows of her mother's ambition. The case of Taylor Rose Williams stands as a stark reminder that behind every perfect picture, a dark and harrowing truth might be lurking. It's a story that will continue to echo as a cautionary tale of neglect, lies, and the ultimate betrayal of a mother's love.